episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of our show with another really fascinating guest helping to create a better tomorrow on many different fronts. We have the pleasure today of being joined by Lou Cooperhouse, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of BlueNalu, which is a fascinating company whose mission is to be the global leader in cell-cultured aquaculture, providing consumers with great tasting, healthy, safe, and trusted cell-cultured seafood products that ultimately support the sustainability and diversity of the ocean. Lou has degrees in both food science and microbiology from Rutgers University. He is recognized as a leading global authority in the food business in terms of innovation, tech commercialization. He has extensive leadership experience throughout his career in the food industry. Prior to BlueNalu, Lou served as the Chief Executive Officer of a company called Food Spectrum, where he was responsible for providing a broad array of consulting and business management expertise to the food industry. He was also founder and the executive director of the Rutgers University Food Innovation Center and led that program for about 15 years. Previously to that, Lou was the president and chief operating officer of FSS Produce, a leading regional supplier of fresh cut produce and value-added refrigerated foods, and co-founder and president and CEO of Menu Direct Corporation, which was a unique health and wellness and nutrition company providing meal solutions for individuals with a range of disorders, including celiac disease, diabetes, PKU. Earlier in his career, Lou had a variety of positions of increasing responsibility: Campbell Soup, ConAgra, Nestle, a variety of other Grand Union supermarkets. And in addition to all of that experience in management, Lou has a considerable amount of experience in food safety and quality assurance, and has provided leadership at numerous FDA and USDA inspected operations, extremely important for what he's endeavoring to do now. Conducted a variety of third-party audits and dozens of food companies throughout the nation. He is certified in preventative controls for human food, is a certified trainer in hazard analysis and critical control points, and he's issued by the International HACCP Alliance, also certified as a ServSafe Food Protection Manager, as issued by the American National Standard Institute. Welcome, Lou Cooperhouse, to the show.
Well, thanks, Ira. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's always great seeing you, Lou. It's I've always been fascinated about what you do. You're leading this amazing company that is at this really interesting intersection in sort of the seafood space, in terms of having all these consumers that are looking for new food choices. They're concerned not only about having healthy food, but of course animal welfare, the conditions that animals are treated. In this case, where foul fish are farmed, and they're also increasingly concerned about personal health, mercury, toxins, poisons, things of this nature that we unfortunately hear too much about from traditional seafood. Talk a little bit, if you would, about BlueNalu, sort of the inception of the idea, and a little bit of how you got involved with this to start things off. I think it's a great way to get going.
Yeah, happy to, Ira. Yeah, as you kind of mentioned in the intro remarks there, I've had a fortune to have a career in an awful lot of new business development, technology innovation, commercialization, whether it be products that were more convenient or healthy, featuring aspects like local and great tasting, or just new types of benefits. But what I really saw happening in my own career pathway, Ira, was just really a transformation at the consumer level, where consumers were seeking products that are not just healthy or convenient for themselves, but increasingly about healthy for the planet. Really embracing sustainability, and food became much more of a societal, social type of choice for people, more so than it had been in the past. Along that way, people started to spend dollars towards a particular targeted area, if you will. I'll call it animal displacement. Really selecting products that were candidly, they did not necessarily want to give up on taste or texture or flavor, but we're really trying to not give up that, but yet still make a choice that was really benefiting humanity and the planet in some way. And it kind of generation 1.0 of that, manifestation, if you will, was plant-based meats. They've been around for a couple of decades, as you know, but what's changed is obviously you have Impossible and Beyond, and now many others that are saying, hey, you don't need to give up on taste or texture for the most part, but you can still enjoy that, but while doing something really good for the planet, and really selecting these products. But along the way, I just became fascinated by something, we'll call that generation 2.0, which in my opinion was kind of the end of the line, the holy grail, to make an animal product without the animal, but it still is the same as characteristics. It's in vitro, so it's made in a different way, but still is the same product, same nutritional attributes, the same sensory characteristics. I just became fascinated by that, and I found myself literally calling this the Holy Grail, the Holy Grails. Just to really make a product in this fashion, I thought was just really, just an amazing technology. But and as I studied that, and I found myself doing public presentations and really talking about this, I said the real opportunity is to really apply this amazing technology against the category that needs it the most, and it's seafood. For all the things you mentioned, Ira, there's so many challenges to our global supply chain of seafood. There's obviously, first of all, just a supply chain gap. As demand's increasing and supply is diminishing, we have a fundamental gap. We just can't feed our future citizens of our planet. But then you have increasingly, compromised products from a personal health point of view, as you mentioned, microplastics, mercury, environmental pollutants, toxins, but also very importantly, the vulnerability of our supply chain. When you think about, here we are in this, sadly, in this world of dealing with COVID, we all recognize how vulnerable our supply chain is. Well, think about animals that come from the sea, vulnerable to warming oceans, acidification, algae blooms, nuclear disaster, any other environmental disaster. Something, quite significant could wipe out a significant amount of our global supply chain. So here you have an increasing demand, a decreasing supply, but a very vulnerable supply. So if you overlay all these issues, and of course, animal suffering, as you mentioned, and much more, when you apply cell-based technology to the seafood category, it really is an overlay of an enormous opportunity. And frankly, I found myself just hyper-focused on this opportunity. And before we knew it, the company was born, as I literally talked myself into a new company startup by just identifying what a tremendous opportunity this really is.
Outstanding. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. It has it's going to have tremendous impact on so much, and we continually hear about the problems in our oceans nowadays, and overfishing and so forth. The last time we talked, one of the very interesting things, unlike let's say the people that are playing around in cell culturing of beef or chicken or whatever, you have there's a big range of fish that comes out of the ocean, and obviously not in terms of variety, but I love fish. I eat a lot of sushi. I cook it, but I don't do a great job. But at the end of the day, you have to create a variety of things that can exist as sushi, that can take acids and exist as ceviche, obviously frying and cooking. Talk a little bit about the range of sort of the different types of fishes that you're looking at. Nothing confidential here, but obviously sort of the portfolio that you're creating there today.
That's a great question, Ira, and frankly, that is arguably a challenge, because as the adage says, there are so many fish in the sea, and candidly, seafood is such a what's the word I'm looking for? Where poultry and beef are relatively well known around the globe. I'll have a chicken breast. I'll have a ribeye steak. People understand what that means, but people don't have confidence or knowledge about seafood. And candidly, you're a bit victim to, if you will, to what's locally available. In the Midwest of the United States or any landlocked countries in Europe, for example, you may not have that much familiarity about seafood in general, let alone what might be local. So on the one hand, there is a great variety. There's hundreds of potential seafood species one could select. So, broadly speaking, as I got a little philosophical about this, there's really, there's three broad categories. There's, if you will, there's finfish, crustaceans, and mollusks. And each of those actually could take on a very different technology roadmap to actually develop, the appropriate technologies to manufacture cell culture seafood. So we decided to begin with finfish, primarily, back to my earlier comment about, the size of the market opportunity. Finfish also represent something that is very motivating with 100% yielded product. People, generally speaking, consume the fillet. You think about crustaceans, or shellfish in general. Many times people associate freshness within the shell. Well, of course, we're not going to necessarily manufacture cell cultured seafood in the shell. So we want to communicate the product that really is recognized as the highest value, and where you would kind of associate the greatest potential freshness and quality. So you think about finfish, as a company, I decided let's target not just on the category finfish. What does that mean? That's like bluefin tuna, red snapper, mahi-mahi, could be Chilean sea bass. It could be many species that really command a premium value, but also are typically on watch lists, are not sustainable, might be high in mercury because they might be predatory fish and so forth. So finfish really do command a number of benefits from a product category point of view. And within finfish, there's saltwater and freshwater fish, and there's also Atlantic and Pacific and farmed and wild, right? So there's a great deal of variety there. But so as a company, we decided to focus on the broad category finfish. And to my earlier comment, we really wanted to be a supply chain solution company driven to, frankly, totally enable, for example, a restaurateur to convert his or her whole menu to cell culture seafood products. So if you have lunch or dinner or appetizers or entrees, if you're featuring seafood in a soup or as part of a main course entree or sushi or sashimi, as you mentioned, BlueNalu can, for example, be that solution and enable you to over time to actually become a cell cultured seafood restaurant. Displace all your seafood products with our products. And we thought that would give us, the greatest potential opportunity. But again, we're focusing initially on finfish, but we do see ourselves evolving over time to certainly considering both crustaceans and mollusks. Crustaceans like crab and lobster, mollusks like scallops, many others. So there are, in fact, so many different species one could select. But we're very excited to be able to offer initially mahi-mahi, then bluefin tuna, and then really a series of species that we could launch one at a time. And then also looking at new forms, like it could be a fillet, it could be a strip for sashimi, it could be saku block, could be all sorts of different applications for different type of markets and opportunities.
I always get very hungry when I talk to you, but that I'll order some sushi later. One of the really exciting things that happened since the last time we chatted is that you recently expanded your operations, and I don't know if you completed your facility or you're in the process of it, but a very large facility that's sort of taking you to that next level of pilot scale. And this is one of the things we always hear about when you read these articles about cell culture, and you hear about the $250,000 hamburger and this and that. But it's nice to see that okay, now you're off the bench and you got a factory, or you're doing this at scale. Once again, nothing confidential, but just take us through what's going on in terms of the new facility, and then any interesting insights, challenges as you have entered this sort of new phase of your development in terms of scale up.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Ira. So maybe a way to preface that is early on at BlueNalu, we actually were very vocal and public about it. As a person that comes from the food industry, my model was, what does success look like? And really, not really focused on BlueNalu or as a company as a kind of a linear fashion. Let me figure out letter C after I get letter B figured out, but of course I start letter A.
Yep.
So my whole approach was, what does success look like? What does letter Z look like? Or at least letter, M or R or somewhere in between. So with that being said, I identified this 5-phase growth strategy. It's actually preceded by phase 0. And phase 0 is really, some of the fundamentals of biology to really develop stable cell lines and really have the tools in the toolbox from which we could then put product in bioreactors of increasingly larger size. Mm-hmm. So what I also identified where phase 1 and phase 2 are some of those early stages of benchtop and then, small scale pilot facility. There's a middle place called phase 3, which is a really important phase. And phase 3 is back to your question, is where we are heading right now. So phase 3 is a pilot production facility in under FDA inspected circumstances. That is essentially a mini factory. It's a pilot facility, but it's a small scale factory. So what does it mean? Is you have all the quality assurance procedures and documentation in place. Whether you're doing 100 million pounds or 100 pounds, you have to have documentation in place, in order to be in commerce. And coming from the food industry, work with FDA and USDA my whole career, that's a robust level of documentation, procedures, and policies and so forth in place. And of course, having all the equipment in place and the right hygiene and all the issues with maintaining people flow, process flow, just to make sure that you're really doing everything right, but in a very small scale way. So back to your question. So we are now entering phase 3, which is about a 40,000 square foot operation. It's our new headquarters operation. It's currently being put into commercialization right now. So we're basically renovating a facility and putting in all the bells and whistles to enable this pilot scale operation. It's a total refurbishment of a facility for this purpose. And what this will allow us to do is to launch into commerce in a small scale way sometime in the next 12 months or so. That would then allow us to launch, say, mahi-mahi, and then bluefin tuna, and then red snapper or other species that we might select, and then also launch them in new forms. Could be a cube, could be a fillet, could be various shapes for different kind of applications. Mm-hmm. We're launching initially in restaurants. We call it LTO, limited time offer availability. So we might, be in 2 months in this operation, 4 months in that operation, maybe 1 unit, maybe 5 units, maybe more, maybe less. And our purpose is to not only be in commerce, but to gain market feedback. Mm-hmm. and really understand consumer communication and product positioning. How does this product perform as an appetizer, an entree, center of the plate? To your earlier point, whether it's in a ceviche or poke or kimchi, or whether it's in sushi or sashimi, whether it's cooked or raw, just to make sure that the product is really, we've already done proof of concept, but now we want to do it, if you will, proof of commercialization. Just take ourselves to the next level. And this gives us really great insight to then go out and build a large scale factory, which would be phase 5. Mm-hmm. Phase 4 will be an intermediate stage where we can kind of demonstrate more automation and really take our facility capacity up to a higher level. So all these are learnings, Ira, that really help us, gain confidence to really, progress to the next level. So yeah, we just came off of a $60 million financing. I think last time we talked, we had closed on a $20 million financing in our A round. So this new financing will allow us to build out our facility and frankly, get ourselves into market. So in the coming year, our anticipation is FDA regulatory clearance, facility completion for this phase 3 operation, and market entry. Again, in a small scale way, but it really gives us and our investors a great deal of confidence, and gives consumers a chance to try this product out for the first time in a variety of different applications.
And yeah, I remember the $20 million round, and then I saw the $60 million recently, and then the very interesting, aside from the number, it's awesome that you're raising this capital to get all this done. But the other really interesting thing in the sort of the syndicate, these are not just sort of your traditional private equity folks. You have a lot of some of the largest sort of food companies in the world here, Sumitomo in Japan, and Rich Products here, Thai Union. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really, there's like a hidden layer there of benefit, in the sense you got some great funders, but you got some really powerful people that can, Japan and Korea and Thailand, and really work with you, not just as a capital investor, but really get sort of things to that next phase, as you were talking about.
I'm glad you brought that point up, Ira, because again, our role as a company and the strategy that I laid out early on was not just to have a company that's really focused on scale production, but scale production also means having the ability to distribute our products globally, the quickest pathway possible at the least possible cost. So what does that mean? That means in my head, I need to really seek out two different, kind of opportunities for strategic partners. One that could really support us on the supply chain. So what does that mean? Cost of goods. So and really, our success will be not only having scale production, but the least cost possible, and really getting ourselves to price parity as fast as possible. Parity against conventional seafood products, as by the way, they continue to increase in price, as our supply globally is continually limiting. Nonetheless, so early on, we brought on Nutreco, one of the largest suppliers of aquaculture feed in the world, feeding fish farms some of the same nutrients that we're feeding fish cells. So there's obvious overlay between what living fish consume and living fish cells consume. And that's an opportunity that we are clearly addressing with Nutreco, complemented by Griffith Foods, a US-based company that really focuses on the supply chain as relates to food science and culinary ingredients. Because of course, our focus is great tasting products that really can meet the same sensory expectations as conventional products. And as you mentioned, Pulmuon in South Korea, Sumitomo in Japan, Thai Union, and obviously headquartered in Thailand, but a global company and one of the largest seafood companies in the world. And of course, Rich Products, all those companies can really support us in sales, marketing, distribution. So that's the second kind of category of strategic partner. So to your point, we're really so excited to announce not just, equity partners that really are mission aligned with us, that really bring great relationships and connections, and certainly have see the long-term potential that BlueNalu represents. Mm-hmm. But secondly, strategic partners that similarly have those same values, but can also help us, over time, create a product of the least possible costs and enable us to really get rapid access to consumers. Because we can't do it alone, Ira. So, our whole success is to really, if you will, be in the middle of that equation. On the left side, if you will, to rely on supply chain partners to really help us with raw materials. Mm-hmm. And on the right side of that equation, with distribution partners that can really enable us to get access to consumers as quickly as possible.
Really, really, really fascinating. And it's, thinking of all the pieces that you put together here, it's from the regulatory, the scale up now, the financing. I mean, it's a very elegant story. What do you, I always get contacted when I do these shows, sort of from what I'll call the next generation, the high school seniors that are just starting out, thinking what they want to do in college, the college freshmen and so forth. People are going to listen and say, hey, you know what, I want to do what Lou Cooperhouse is doing. I want to get involved. What do you recommend to the next generation that wants to maybe come work with you in a couple of years? Are you looking for more scientists, business development folks? Send a little message to the sort of the next generation that gets excited about these stories and wants to not just come work with you, may want to replace you one day. Give some advice, if you would, especially for those excited in sort of the STEM fields.
Happy to, Ira. Yeah, in fact, in a previous life, I was actually a adjunct faculty member at the Rutgers Business School, yep. Working with interfunctional team consulting projects with MBA capstone student projects. And with your question in mind, what's really fascinating about the food industry in general, maybe it's not just about BlueNalu, but if you take a step back, this category is so hot right now. Yes, I'm biased, but the food industry is clearly the opportunity that could be the most transformative of anything that we've ever seen ever in the food industry. What's really occurring right now. And I really equate what we're doing now to very similar to the computer industry in the 1970s. So, that was hard to believe, that's 50 years ago now, when the first, personal computers came out, and obviously a whole industry, spawned for the next couple of decades in so many ways, and it's still evolving, right? The computer industry, 50 years later. But that's really where the food industry is today, or the last several years. It's the beginning of a really global transformation. So BlueNalu will have opportunities, but there's so many opportunities in this whole space. You're seeing in agricultural technology with sensing technologies, drones that pick fruit off of trees, ripening indicators, vertical farms. In our sector, we're seeing not just plant-based or cell cultured, but also fermentation technologies that are hyper focused on displacing animal products, whether it's leather or silk or collagen or gelatin, or a seafood meat or poultry, or it's kind of niches like, foie gras or certain or fat. There's so many different categories and opportunities. So we are just at the beginning of really something that is, we're literally witnessing something enormous. So if anything, for any young people out there, the food industry is clearly a place to think about your career pathway, and really identifying an existing product business that can be transformed with a new solution, like we're doing at BlueNalu with seafood. But in our case, we're also very focused at BlueNalu that this world cannot keep up. BlueNalu can't do this alone. Wild caught and farm raised will continue to be solutions to feed the world. If all BlueNalu did was meet the gap that is only increasing in our supply chain, we would be an extraordinarily successful company. If we could really help, mitigate some of the, the overfishing or illegal fishing that occurs, for example, in the case of bluefin tuna, that's an enormous benefit we're doing for not just mankind, but animal kind in general, and keeping more fish in the ocean and really maintaining the ecosystem. So back to your question, there are so many opportunities. We're really looking for people who really understand, food industry very holistically, because there's so many parts to it. There's the biology, there's the engineering, the operations, there's the regulatory, there's the marketing, there's the business strategy, sales, the communications. So, there are so many elements to this whole category, and it is so brand new. We are really introducing new disciplines for the first time. We're an integration of both biology and engineering, regulatory, marketing, sales, and traditional food science, in new ways. And it's just extraordinary what we're doing, Ira, and all of us are doing the same thing. And all, I happen to know, we all kind of know each other pretty well, all the founders out there. We're all looking for these kind of individuals who could really bring diverse experiences to a company that really relies heavily on this diversity to really be successful. So hopefully that answers the question, but really that cross-functional expertise and thinking out of the box, are really key traits. And one last comment is, sometimes I describe people as authors or editors. Author loves creating something that's never been done before. An editor likes to make things better. You always need a little bit of both, but in this industry, you need a lot of authors. You need people who are just motivated, passionate, excited by accomplishing what's never been done before. And of course, you need people that make things better. But it's important to surround yourself with people that are not, have no fear and are just, excited to create something that's not only, from an innovation point of view, so amazing, but from a just a global health point of view and the ability to make a difference, here, this is an opportunity, from all of us have varying levels of mission alignment, and social desires. But, this whole category of the food industry is really a chance to create a win-win, something that can be so intellectually motivating, but personally motivating, and something you could say that you left to future generations and left the world in a better place. And, that's really what we're all trying to do, and the kind of employees we're trying to attract.
Outstanding. Outstanding. It's a fascinating story. Lou, one final question. I gave you this last time. I have to ask it again because it's been about a year, but have you gotten any exotic requests? The giant squid, the whale, anything bizarre that someone wants you to make? If I put $1 billion and I give it to you tomorrow, will you make me a really fancy sushi that no one's ever made before? I'm just messing around, but do you get any weird requests along the way in terms of exotic stuff?
No, I appreciate the question, Ira, and we're frankly trying to avoid the weird requests. We're trying to, we're very focused at BlueNalu to really hit the mainstream, and making seafood products, accessible, and I think a good example is bluefin tuna. Yep. It's not a exotic request, but it is exotic to many people because they never had it before. Yep. So bluefin tuna is a great example. If you will, it's an oxymoron what we're doing. Today it's a supply restricted model. 80% of global supply goes to Japan. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, for 80% of that, I think, is also used in sushi. So what BlueNalu can do with bluefin is literally democratize that for all. It can now be accessible. So we've changed this paradigm from a supply restricted model to a demand driven model. So in terms of being exotic, we can make bluefin tuna freshly available in the Midwestern United States, landlocked Europe, or even Africa. And so it's really a chance to, perhaps increase consumption dramatically of a species that otherwise was unattainable. So that's kind of the paradigm shift we're doing at BlueNalu, and we're very excited by that being kind of our exotic feature, if you will.
Very cool. Very cool. I'll ask you for the exotic stuff in a couple of years.
You can ask me again, no problem.
Once again, it's fascinating the progress you've made. Really wishing you the best with all this, and for everybody that's going to be listening on the podcast or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been listening to Lou Cooperhouse, President and Chief Executive Officer at BlueNalu, leading the charge and providing consumers with great tasting, healthy, safe, and trusted cell-cultured seafood products. Lou, it's as always great seeing you. I really appreciate again your time. Thanks for everything that you're doing there, and as we say on the show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow for all of us via these technologies and different practices. It's been a really great time seeing you again.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Albert. Thank you so much.